Hello everybody and welcome to Forever Motorsports on Forever Sports. The Monaco Grand Prix is upon us. Reece is joining me here as we're going to go and look at all the various things leading into the weekend. Of course, Red Bull leading the Constructors' Championships and the Drivers' Championships with Perez and Verstappen. Lots of things could happen this week in terms of points. It all comes down to qualifying, of course, in Monaco. Monaco, not the most exciting racetrack, but certainly one of the most historic, if not the most historic, in the world. Reece, your thoughts heading into the brilliant challenge, I suppose, in terms of time trial, that is Monaco.
Yes, well, Monaco is, of course, a very, very special race weekend on our calendar. It is such a spectacle. We have so many big Formula One fans, as well as a lot of celebrities that come to watch in Monaco. It is, as you say, not the most exciting race in terms of racing. It is just pretty much a time trial, with a lot of the race results being taken from qualifying the day before, as the track is just so narrow, and it is, with these new cars, pretty much impossible to overtake here.
Yeah, and I mean, we've just got a few facts, of course, that we're going to go through for Monaco going into this weekend, but just some did you knows and things like that, and then, of course, looking at the news heading straight into the Monaco weekend, such as Lewis Hamilton potentially going to Ferrari in the coming years as a replacement there in that Ferrari seat. We're looking at the Mercedes upgrades, of course, that are going into this weekend. So that's the big news, of course. And yeah, it's just some other small news items that have also happened. Not much else has really happened, but otherwise looking at what could potentially go down this weekend in the streets of Monaco. So Reece, just run us through here, the Masters of Monaco.
Yes, of course. We see just such incredible performances here from those outstanding drivers that we have in Formula One history, with the likes of Ayrton Senna, who famously burst onto the Formula One scene with a storming performance in the rain-soaked 1984 Monaco Grand Prix, and currently holds the record for the most wins at Monaco, with 6 race wins here, including 5 consecutive victories between 1989 and 1993. Graham Hill then, next on the list, took 5 of his 14 Formula One wins on the streets of Monaco between 1963 and 1969. Then onto one of my favourite Formula One drivers of all time. I got to see a few of his championship winning cars last weekend in Maranello, Michael Schumacher, who took 5 victories in the Principality here in Monaco between 1994 and 2001. Next on the list then is Alain Prost, who won 4 times in the 1980s, while battling it out against Sterling Moss and Jackie Stewart, each winning 3 times at Monaco. Of the current top crop of drivers, Lewis Hamilton has had 3 wins in Monaco, Max Verstappen and Sergio Perez, both with 1 apiece.
Yes, and the interesting thing is Red Bull don't actually, for all that's got those 2 there now, Red Bull don't have a very good history at Monaco at all.
Actually, they do. Red Bull have really done well in the last few years. They won with...
Yes, recently, yes.
Well, they've won with Mark Webber, they've won with Daniel Ricciardo, Max Verstappen and Sergio Perez. They seem to like it here. They have a massive barge that they also bring in from one of the towns nearby. They have to bring it in over the sea, of course, because Monaco is so tight. And they have a massive big Red Bull energy station where they bring a lot of their celebrities and sponsored athletes to come and watch the Monaco Grand Prix.
So Monaco, of course, looking to be Red Bull's, what would it be, 5th victory because of the cancelled Imola. I'm just trying to remember now. Imola, of course, getting cancelled last week, so we're going to have the first bit of Grand Prix racing for a little while, because we haven't had a Grand Prix for a long time. Lots of floods, of course, not too far away from Monaco, obviously in the outskirts of Italy, and Imola around about there. Reece will know very well. Unfortunately, it was supposed to be a time when Reece was going to be on the ground at Imola. Nonetheless, that'll happen soon. I'm sure we'll get another opportunity to go and see live Grand Prix racing. But going back onto the Monaco Grand Prix, and did you know? Just a couple of these, I'm going to read out just a few of them, just some interesting things. So yeah, Jim Clark took pole at Monaco 4 times, yet he never claimed victory at the track. And another one here, more recently, in 2018, Charles Leclerc became the first Monegasque driver to compete in their home race since Olivier Beretta in 1994. After 3 failed attempts, Leclerc finally reached the checkered flag on home soil for the first time in 2022. Of course, lots of eyes will be on the Monegasque of Charles Leclerc, who's been seen driving around in his Ferrari in the streets of Monaco this week leading up to his home Grand Prix. Could he perhaps pull something off for Ferrari? Of course, Ferrari have had some decent qualifiers so far this season, and Monaco's all down to qualifying. So maybe Charles Leclerc could get a decent qualifying time in.
Yes, he will certainly have to fight it out with Fernando Alonso and Max Verstappen, and of course Sergio Perez, who is the king of the street circuits so far this year. Lots of talk, though, going into this race weekend from Fernando Alonso, who seems quite confident with the Aston Martin's performance. I wonder if they are also bringing some upgrades this race weekend with the likes of Mercedes.
Yeah, I'm certainly hoping to see a very good performance from Aston Martin. I think, funny enough, this might be a weekend where the points are really quite scattered throughout the bunch, because if Red Bull don't qualify 1 and 2, they're not going to finish 1 and 2, I don't think. Not unless everybody ahead of them that happens to have finished higher manages to crash out in the race, because it's so unlikely that you'd be overtaken in Monaco. You'd have to do really well to get overtaken, essentially.
The only way we've really seen drivers able to make overtakes, it's not even on track. You have to do it with your strategy. Yes, with your pits. I mean, we've seen it in the past with the Red Bulls and the Ferraris, where the Red Bulls just caught the Ferraris out and were able to leapfrog them in the pits. But we'll have to see what happens this race weekend. There is also a lot of rain scheduled, so we could have another very, very exciting race on our hands here in Monaco.
Yeah, and going back to the whole overtake story, of course, one of the only ways you can overtake is undercutting through the pits and through strategy like that. But if you do get held up behind other drivers, you can't go quicker, and that could lose you time in terms of trying to overtake those people in the pits. So even though Red Bull might be aiming for that sort of strategy, if they should not finish 1 and 2, they're going to have to try and get around people to make up time, and if they get stuck behind slower cars, then they're going to be stuck behind slower cars.
I mean, never mind slower cars. We've seen in the past in Rasgas where I think it may have been Pascal Wehrlein in the Sauber who managed to lose it and just completely block the entire road, and everyone had to stop behind him. They were not able to get past at all. I mean, if that happens and you're racing against P1 and you get caught by a back marker like that, that can completely ruin your race if you do not get a safety car.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a ridiculous thing in Monaco. And just going on to more ridiculousness, a couple more facts for you as well. The hairpin, of course, the very famous hairpin there in Monaco, is the slowest corner in the F1 calendar, taken at just 48 kilometers an hour. That's what me, you, and everybody at home drive at. The corner has had a number of names through the years. Originally the station hairpin, and then the Lowe's hairpin. It's now named after the hotel which sits on its outside of the track, the Fairmont. And of course, just another little fact for you here. McLaren have led more laps on the Monaco Grand Prix than any other team.
Don't know if we'll see them leading any laps of this race weekend.
They've completed 916 laps in the lead. Michael Schumacher is the driver to have led more laps here than any other driver, having led 435 laps over the course of his career. Insane, that. And just one more little fact for you here. 82 different drivers have stood on the Monaco Grand Prix podium over the past 70 years. Ayrton Senna took the most top 3 finishes, 8 in total, while Sebastian Vettel and Lewis Hamilton each finished in the top 3 at Monaco 7 times.
Yes, such an amazing track, of course, to watch. Unfortunately, the racing is not so great. I mean, I think we certainly need to bring some changes in the sport to allow racing to be a bit closer on street circuits like this.
Yeah.
Because these current cars are just so wide and so long, it just does not promote any close racing at all. And if you try to make an overtake here, I think both cars will pretty much end up in the wall.
Yeah, it's the cars are too big, unfortunately. That's the problem with Monaco and a lot of street circuits, some of them. The cars now are huge, and that's the problem, is that there's no space to now overtake. But moving on to a couple of changes that have happened this year with regards to Monaco, is that F1 has stopped the Thursday practice at Monaco Grand Prix. And if you'll know, and if you've been watching Formula One, Monaco usually has the first practice on a Thursday to then break on the Friday before continuing on the Saturday and the Sunday. And here is why they have stopped the practices taking place on the Thursday. Otherwise, that would have been today. Formula One so it says, until the changes made last year, drivers would have tackled the challenging twists and turns of the Principality on Thursday before taking off. The tradition is no more. The Ascension Day is the reason. I think the Monaco Grand Prix traditionally coincides with the Monegasque Ascension Day bank holiday. The holiday falls on the Friday, and the event of the event, so F1 has historically paused operations to mark the day, allowing local traffic to pass through the Principality streets with relative ease, whilst local businesses were able to use the break to restock before what would be a hectic weekend period. But for 2022 and 2023 now, F1 took the decision to remove the break day and revert to a more familiar 3-day weekend schedule. So quite interesting the fact that Monaco themselves have a bank holiday, or the alternative, a national holiday
race weekend
for the Grand Prix weekend almost, because it literally falls on the Friday of the F1 event. It's scheduled in any certain time. It's when the F1 is, and that just tells you how important Formula One is for Monaco.
Yes, just before we move on to the next article, just another fact that I saw that we had historically we've had Monaco have been in charge of all of the production as well as the direction of the footage for the Formula One race weekend. But this year, Formula One have decided to take back that from Monaco. Thank goodness, because often in the past we've seen terrible directing. Often we see there's a battle for the front, and then we go and see Lance Stroll at the back. I mean, really. So it's quite a welcome change for sure that we are going to have Formula One taking over directorship for the Formula One Monaco Grand Prix race weekend. I'm sure it will be a lot better than what we've had in the past.
Yeah, I'm certain that we won't be faffing about at the back with the Alpha Tauris and the Alfa Romeos, and more faffing about with those Mercedes drivers, Ferrari drivers, and Red Bull drivers. And speaking of Mercedes, of course, lots of news this week. Before we get even into Mercedes' big upgrades that are coming this weekend, hint, hint, nudge, nudge, before we get into it, just so you stick around for a little bit longer. SIDEPODs are the big talk, of course. But the other big talk in Mercedes is that of Lewis Hamilton and his potentially going to Ferrari. What do you know about this, Reece?
Well, I can pretty much shoot this down almost immediately, but I will wait for that for a few minutes. But there's been a lot of talk, of course. It is that time of the season where we have silly season pretty much taking over, where drivers' contracts are coming to the end at the end of 2020. Well, what are we in now? 2023. Yes, so Lewis Hamilton's contract comes to an end at the end of this year. So, of course, there are going to be a lot of rumours, as per usual, when you have such a high caliber driver coming to the end of his contract. But there's been a lot of talk about Ferrari wanting to sign Lewis Hamilton. Of course, I'm sure Lewis would prefer to stay with Mercedes if they can get to the bottom of their issues with their zero side pod car, or, as we'll talk about later, a side pod car. But the biggest part of the rumours of him going to Ferrari is the fact that they are reportedly going to offer him £40 million a year to race in the red Ferrari seat.
Yeah, I mean, it's I know it's all ridiculous talk, but at the end of the day, it's not abnormal for Ferrari to go and do this sort of thing, because we have seen Ferrari go and get great drivers near the end of their careers to come in and fill that spot. We saw that with Sebastian Vettel, of course, and the likes of, I mean, yes, Michael Schumacher wasn't at the end of his career, but was certainly there for many, many, many years. And they went and got back Kimi Raikkonen again as well, after having a great season, great couple of seasons with them prior to that, many years before that. So they're not adverse to going and getting a seasoned professional back in for a couple of seasons. So it wouldn't be unlike Ferrari.
It certainly worked for them in the past with Michael Schumacher. Of course, he wasn't as seasoned back then, but he was in Benetton. He won his first championship with them. He could have stayed on and won more championships with them, but Michael decided to go across to Ferrari and give himself a bit of a challenge. Maybe that is what Hamilton is looking for at the moment. A bit of a challenge to build up a team from not necessarily race wins. I mean, Ferrari are able to win races, but maybe just to structure the team a bit better and allow them to, well, for him to tell them where they need to make changes. Of course, they've got Fred Vasseur, their new team principal, who has come out already and said all of this is just as it seems. It's just rumours. They haven't had any contract talks with Hamilton or his management so far. But as we know in Formula One, where there's smoke, there's often fire.
Yes, I know. And the good thing is that a lot of these stories, you know, a lot of them gibberish and rubbish and a lot of that stuff. But sometimes, as Reece says, if there's smoke, there's fire sometimes. And I would not be surprised as well, because, of course, team principals are never going to go out and say, yes, of course, we are going after Lewis Hamilton and things like that. So I doubt very much they are. But I wouldn't be surprised.
You'd be stupid not to take a dig at getting Hamilton in your seat. He is a seasoned professional with 7 world championships. I'm sure every team on the grid would love to have him. Whether they could afford them, though, that is the question.
Yeah. And of course, now we move to the next little piece of information. That is, of course, the amazing thing. So I've just got a little bit of the image right ahead of my face here, which is quite funny. But I'm just going to move that ahead of myself. There we go. Look at that. So one thing that we can look forward to this weekend, while speaking about Mercedes and Lewis Hamilton, is the big upgrades that have been leaked online ahead of it, and that we've seen for Mercedes heading into the weekend. So Formula 1 journalist Albert Fabrega has taken to social media to share a photo of the reported new SIDEPODs on the Mercedes W14 ahead of the Monaco Grand Prix. The Silver Arrows were due to unveil a radical shake-up to their car at Imola prior to the race's cancellation. That would have made a lot more sense, because unveiling upgrades to Monaco is a bit of an odd one, considering it's a very difficult racetrack. Nonetheless, the team currently find themselves unable to compete with Red Bull in their dominant RB19 and have pinned that on their notorious zero-pod design this season. And big news of the week is the fact that they no longer have zero pods.
Well, it is a bit deeper than just the side pods. I've been, of course, going into it quite a lot today. I am putting together a technical analysis video for all of you guys, and that shall be up hopefully shortly this race weekend. It's not just the side pods that they have made radical changes to. Most of their front suspension is completely different. Trying to address the... Well, they have braking issues quite a lot. You hear George Russell and Lewis Hamilton talking about. Their front suspension changes are hoping to tackle that quite a bit better. But of course, the major aesthetic change that you can see is those side pods finally being brought back. Whether this is going to allow them to compete immediately, I don't think so. They've got 1.5 years now to catch up on the rest of the grid.
Yeah.
I mean, they've all been running side pods for 1.5 years. Mercedes have adamantly stuck to the zero side pod design, and now they have to catch up 1.5 years of R&D, 1.5 years of error analysis. This has really bit them in the bum.
Yeah, I mean, just to go further on and furthering on from what Reece is saying, bring a significant upgrade package like the one that we're talking about to the narrow street circuit of Monaco is really quite risky. Of course, Monaco being one of the most difficult tracks to race for all these drivers, and so tight, likelihood of putting their car into the wall quite highly likely. And when you're running upgrades, you don't really want to be doing any sort of repairs and having to do damage limitation, because you wanted to see how the car can get around. And also, you're not really going to get a good idea of how well the upgrades have managed to work, because it's not a normal track.
It is such a slow street circuit as well. Of course, as you said earlier, it has the slowest corner on the Formula 1 calendar, which means that if they're trying to do any aerodynamic analysis, you're not going to get very good data from it, because you don't have any long straights to get some good fluid dynamics testing, where they paint those cars in those high-vis paints, which allow them to see how the air flows down their car. You're not going to get a lot of that, because it's so slow, and you don't have a long straight to allow that paint to really show you where the air is moving over that car.
No, as I said, so lots of things to go and talk about, and of course, as Reece says, he's going to be doing a deep dive into all of those changes for the weekend. But could this potentially put Mercedes back into the question of future races? Who knows? As I'm sure it's the step in the right direction for the Silver Arrows, or / the Black Arrows now, as I think I might call them. But
Carbon arrows.
The Carbon Arrows, yes. But nonetheless, Mercedes have got lots of work to do. But could this potentially lead them in the right direction for George Russell and Lewis Hamilton and Toto Wolff and all of the other buggers at Mercedes? And we move on to just the last little bit of news with regards to those upgrades, and that's exactly what we're pretty much saying, is the fact that Mercedes must not draw too many conclusions from the upgrades, says team principal Toto Wolff.
Yes, I mean, they are currently 122 points adrift from Red Bull after only 5 races so far this season. Mercedes were originally going to bring their new developments to the Emilia-Romagna Grand Prix. Of course, we know that was unfortunately cancelled due to the drastic weather conditions that were taking place in the Emilia-Romagna region, which I think unfortunately even bit them further due to the fact that they were not able to get some testing done. I think that's pretty much what they were planning in Emilia Romagna or Imola. They were pretty much just going to be doing testing that entire race weekend. They were writing it off. But this race weekend in Monaco is where they have now brought these upgrades. The revised calendar means that Monaco is now the starting point of the European leg of the season, said Wolf. It is a unique event, but will still provide an opportunity to learn about the upgrades to the W14. But we also need to be careful not to draw too many conclusions from this one event. We are introducing the first step in a new development direction. It's about time. I'm sure many Mercedes fans will be happy that they have finally dropped that zero side pod design. We can call it a concept because it was
a concept that never worked.
That never actually gave them any race wins in a season and 5 races. It won't be a silver bullet, says Wolf. From my experience, they do not exist in our sport. We hope that it gives the drivers a more stable and predictable platform. Once again, going onto that front suspension, it should give them a lot more stability in braking as well as turning. We hope that it gives the drivers a more stable and predictable, as I said, then we can build on that in the weeks and months ahead. Formula One is tough. It's a competition that does not allow mediocrity. We are not where we want to be, but there's no sense of entitlement. It's just about hard work to get us to the front. And unfortunately, Mercedes has a lot of hard work ahead of them in the next, I think for the rest of the season, really, we're not going to see them challenging for the front. They may now really fall to the midfield with these upgrades until they get to grips with it.
Or they could suddenly find themselves right at the front after qualifying, and it'll be the most hilarious thing in the world.
I will be extremely, extremely surprised.
Of course, it's 0.00001% chance, but perhaps, maybe, I'm going to do this for all the Merc fans who are so desperate to see their team get back into winning position. Maybe this is the upgrade they always needed, and that car's going to be suddenly quicker than that Red Bull.
I mean, the only data they have at all on SIDEPODS is from Spain testing in early 2021. That is it. They have, I think, 2 days worth of data on that from when they were still hiding their zero SIDEPODS concept. And that's it. I mean, they have really, really found themselves on the back foot here. Just from, I think it's Naomi Schiff here speaking, I don't think he's considering it, leaving Mercedes, talking about Lewis Hamilton with the Ferrari contract negotiations. But if these upgrades do not live up to what Mercedes are hoping that they will, and potentially, let's talk about next season, and they start poorly again, then he will be considering it in what manner he wants to end his Formula One career. Of course, that is, I mean, you have to give it to Hamilton. He has had a stellar career up until this point. You don't want to end up finishing your career being in the back. I mean, you want to be still challenging for races. Last year was his first season in Formula One where he hasn't won a race. I mean, he will be fuming about that, I'm sure.
Yeah. As I say, this is all in anticipation of the Monaco Grand Prix. So, lots and lots of things to look forward to, of course, in what is arguably the most dire race to watch, but the most famous and most luxurious event, I'd almost say, in the world calendar for any sport. It is, of course, Monaco Grand Prix in Formula One. Just quickly going into this weekend, of course, we're looking at the driver standings here. We've got Max Verstappen in first place, Sergio Perez in second, Fernando Alonso in third. That little friend that's always there, the third wheel, that is Fernando Alonso. Lewis Hamilton, however, in that Mercedes is currently sitting fourth, Carlos Sainz in fifth, George Russell in sixth, and the Monegasque of Charles Leclerc in seventh, with the following Aston Martin, Lance Stroll in eighth. Can any of those teams managed to get something up on those 2 Red Bulls? Up at number 1, of course, Red Bull still leading the Constructors' Championship by a hell of a long way already. And other teams to sort of look out for, of course, Alpine racing in what is almost a home but not quite a home Grand Prix. Of course, Monaco in between Italy and France, so almost home for Alpine. Alfa Romeo as well will be looking to try and have a decent few fans there, hopefully supporting Valtteri Bottas and Guan Yu Zhou. Oscar Piastri in the McLaren and Lando Norris in the McLaren will be needing to try and do something this weekend to sort of get their season back on track.
Yes, just touching on the McLaren, they also have brought in a special livery for this race weekend. We saw them doing it. You snigger, but yes. They have brought in a Triple Crown livery, just paying homage to their, I think it was an Indy 500 win, Le Mans win, as well as a Monaco Grand Prix win. So they have a black nose on their car, a white central part, and then orange at the back. A lot of people saying it looks like a cigarette, but it is a welcome change, at least to McLaren. I'm sure fans will be excited about the livery, but will we be seeing much of it? I don't think so down in P18. And
Well, you know,
P19.
maybe with less orange paint, it might be a slightly lighter because you know white paint is lighter than darker paint. So you know it's a little bit more white. So maybe that's all the pace they need.
I still don't think it's going to fix McLaren's.
No, not at all. And of course, other teams that are in trouble at the moment: Haas, AlphaTauri, and the Williams. So could those teams do something in the midfield? This is all in anticipation of the Monaco Grand Prix. Guys, thank you so much for watching Forever Motorsports going into this weekend. Big weekend. Reece, thank you so much for being here as well. I've been Mark. Reece has been Reece. You have been watching Forever Motorsports. Let's get into the Monaco Grand Prix. Cheerio.